Tupa's Wrath is the new spark skill added for Cursed War DLC. You can use it to effortlessly fill the screen with projectiles, hitting everything without having to aim. It's also the perfect skill to take advantage of the newly buffed shock since it has ailment scaling baked in and does lightning damage, so you're going to get some massive crits on enemies as you progress into the endgame. Speaking of, this build guide is going to go over how to level as Tupa's Wrath, how to transition into a conviction build, a part of a game where many players struggle, and then wrap everything up with an endgame version of a build capable of clearing Nightmare Tier 16s. So first up, the leveling experience. I'm going to assume that you turn on all skills mode. This way, you can play Tupa's Wrath starting in Act 1. Tupa's Wrath is a lightning projectile spell. It releases sparks, which travel erratically. After a short time, these projectiles can hit the same enemy again, meaning that projectile speed and projectile duration is an increase to your single target damage. The skill itself gives shock intensity, meaning you want to build crit early on while also taking lightning damage synergies. After all, it's your lightning damage that's going to be inflicting shock. So, the ideal supporting skill to grab, Prayer of Vengeance. This gives you crit hit chance and crit damage. Global skill ranks give you even more flat crit chance, and you can activate it for a larger bonus. For your movement skill, use Passage. Also, prioritize higher rarity blessings for Passage, as those increase its skill ranks and grant you cooldown reduction. Last but not least, grab Judgment. This lowers enemy resistances and helps with early game damage scaling. The ailment duration doesn't really matter here. On your gear, the most important thing to prioritize early is a gun. The more damage you can get, the better. In addition, look for a left ring with either life leech or crit chance, and a right ring with either crit damage or base damage. Aside of that, try to get defensive stats like life and resistances on the rest of your gear, plus movement speed on boots. Now, one of the reasons that I'm recommending Tupa's Wrath specifically out of all the new skills, it works pretty well out of a box. You don't need specific relics. Though, if you happen to get something like Cloak of Storms, it is very nice. You're going to get hit occasionally, so you're going to automatically be casting Tupa's Wrath, and if you run out of potions you're stuck at low damage, you will get that juicy lightning damage bonus. Aside of that, if you happen to find a Book of Sin, this fully automates your Judgment, so you don't have to cast it except on rares and bosses. Now for your normal magic and rare relics, on Grand and Exalted, those are the largest of the 1x4 and 2x2s, prioritize maximum life, and especially as you get into Acts 2, 3, and 4, maximum mana. Flat life and mana are also quite good. Then try to fill all of your slots with large relics that have lightning damage. Large relics are the 2x1s. For anything else, fill in with small relics for defensive stats like resistances, or some good rare affixes if you happen to roll them. Now it's difficult to get good imbuements during the campaign, but if you happen to roll the Faith imbuement for lightning damage on either a 1x4 or 2x2 relic, keep that relic for the rest of a leveling experience. Also, if you can find any larger relic with all resistances as a corruption, even if the stats are garbage, that's going to be a huge bonus that will absolutely carry you in Act 1 and Act 2. For your Blessing of Foundation, focus on the mana line. Start by taking 15% increased mana, then take 30% mana regeneration, followed by minus 10% skill mana cost. This leads to the Tier 4 Blessing, gain damage based on a portion of your mana, which is going to be an incredible damage scaler early on. On the Great Bell, you start by pathing through the Red Portal, Reliquary Size, and Hellclock Timer. This gets you a lot of basic mechanics. After that, you path down towards the maximum skill level and reliquary size. The TLDR is in most of these branches, you simply go to the maximum skill level and reliquary size while grabbing other valuable things along the way, such as this 4th blessing. Now from there, you can either save your points until you unlock Act 2, and then follow down this path, or you can grab optional things like Second Wind, which is a cheat death effect. If you're not dying, you don't need this. If you are dying, absolutely pick it up. You can also get things like extra Soulstone gain or Gold gain. Soulstone means you can enhance more relics. Gold gain means you get more things like Blessing of Foundation and relic rerolls within your run. As you transition into becoming a conviction build in Acts 2 and 3, be sure to take the conviction gained from mana spent nodes at the top left of your bell tree. In Act 2, the main change that you make is unlocking the constellation system. So on your first choice, you will take the devotion path. So you put your initial points into Tupa. Pretty fitting, all things considered. From here, you start filling out Jockey to get Light in the Darkness, passively reducing enemy lightning resistance. After that, you progress by investing in the Agility Orb and Cooldown Reduction constellations. These aren't immediately beneficial in Act 2, but as you continue to progress, and especially as you enter the early endgame, they're going to become way more important. As you continue to progress through Act 2 and into Act 3, you start adding Conviction to your build. This is a shield that protects your health, and it's also very good for spell damage scaling. To enable the spell damage scaling part, use Written Promise. For Conviction generation, remember to take the mana spent 2 conviction nodes at the top left of your bell, and look out for a Peace and Quiet. This gives you Conviction whenever you use Passage to teleport near enemies. Now, some other unique relics to look out for that could be helpful but are not required include the Bloody Doll and Call the Guard. If you get both, equip Summon Catholic Guard in your empty skill slot. You don't need to give it any ranks. This provides a damage boost roughly equivalent to a well-rolled large relic. So not groundbreaking, but not bad to have, especially if you just took a reliquary expansion and have the spare space. Another nice relic to have is the Scorched Branch. This allows you to build stun on enemies using the lightning hits from your Tupa's Wrath. It doesn't directly contribute to your damage, but stunning a boss at the right time is the difference between dying and losing the run, or continuing all the way to floor 21. As you finish up with the campaign and complete Expeditus, the constellation that gives agility orbs, keep an eye out for the Careful Hunter relic and the Belt of a Cowboy. Belt of a Cowboy gives you a large portion of your conviction whenever you're hit. This portion is based on your evasion rating, and so you need to get yourself some evasion rating. You can find this on your helmet, chest, and shawl. You can also get some from Careful Hunter since you'll have agility orbs. And last but not least, you can find it via a discipline imbuement on small relics. As you switch over to Conviction, it's even more important to have flat mana rolls and percentage mana rolls on your relics, because your maximum conviction is based off of your mana pool. Next up, I want to talk about the transition from the campaign version of a build to the endgame version. Because after you complete the campaign, a lot changes as you move into the Endless Nightmares endgame system. The first thing that you should do is change your world tier from normal to abyss. This way you can see all of the resistance penalties and the evasion penalty from the abyss world tier. Now, as you continue to progress, you're going to get more constellation points. After completing the campaign, it should look roughly like this, where you have Tupa for power orbs, Expeditus for agility orbs, then Oksumare for damage bonuses and cooldown. Later on, this will become more optional, but for now it's pretty good. Last up, of course, you have Light the Darkness to shred enemy lightning resistance. Your next goal comes when you unlock 6 more constellation points. You'll put 1 point here into Fury, then you will fill out this entire constellation, which gives you huge bonuses for Conviction. But since filling this constellation out gives you a completion bonus that includes Fury, you can then unspec this point before accepting and put it into something else like more lightning damage or more mana. The next change is that upon entering Abyss, you get access to the Oblivion Bell. This is an endgame version of the bell that you've been progressing so far, and a few things have moved. So the first thing to do is unlock your core mechanics. This would be things like your 4th Blessing, Hellclock Time, Starting Blessing, and Banish at the top, and then, of course, as you go down, some of the bigger damage wheels here, while pathing over to Second Wind on the right, and Critical Chance on the left. The red portal has moved over here on the far upper left. After that, you can either path to the right to fix resistances if you need, or you can go back into Conviction from mana spent. That's accessed here through this mana node, or by pathing all the way down this tree to the left. Now's a good time to talk about gear and relics. Before doing this next part, depending on how many resources you have coming out of a campaign, you might want to do a couple runs of Nightmare Tier 4. This is the same difficulty as Act 4 of a campaign, and it gives you a good opportunity to farm gear and relics, because once you enter Endless Nightmares, you start to get Tier 7 and 8 gear, and you start to get these shiny Tier 4 relics. So for example, I did a couple runs, I got this gun which has way more base damage than my current weapon. I also got a nice upgrade to my base damage ring. I should probably phase that out for a crit damage ring, but hey, it's a lot better than what I have right now. I'm going to swap over to an evasion chest. Remember, evasion is going to be important for Belt of a Cowboy. Similarly, I have an evasion helmet, so I'm not going to use either of these, though later on, man, it could be good. For boots, I'm going to use move speed elemental resistance. For belt, I'm going to go with cooldown. For pants, it depends. If you need Fizz Res, go with Fizz Res. Otherwise, go cooldown speed. Similarly, if you find yourself running out of mana, go for minus skill mana cost on your accessory. But if you are not running out of mana to the point where it's impacting your DPS, go cooldown speed. Not only does this mean you can use things like Prayer of Vengeance more easily and teleport around more with passage, but you're spending more mana, thus generating more conviction. Last up, as you play, you will drop a keepsake. At this gearing level, there's not that much difference between max mana and max conviction. Use whichever drops first. And as you swap gear, remember to disassemble everything for soulstones because you're going to need a lot of those. So for relics, here's what I have currently. It's a mix of genuinely useful things and things that weren't very good, but I had nothing better in the meantime. So I'm going to start by taking off all the things that I have a better version of, i.e. I have a Tier 4 written promise which can replace my Tier 3. I don't have a better version of a Cloak of Storms, so I'll keep that for now. Okay, I've upgraded all of my unique relics to better versions, but now I need to add some new ones, specifically Belt of a Cowboy. This means removing one of my rare relics, and I'm specifically going to remove a Grand Relic, as I want to stack a lot of smalls and use those to cap my evasion rating. I'm going to remove the other one as well, since, again, I want to stack a bunch of smalls and cap my evasion rating. And because I have mana on this, I'm going to try to roll mana on one of my new uniques. The other thing I'm going to do, at least for now, is take off this relic and this relic, because they don't provide any damage or defense from the rare affix. Try to get projectile amount, spell damage against shocked and stunned, shock intensity, and Tupa's Wrath gains damage based on mana. Also, I need one of the slots for my Careful Hunter. Next, I'm going to roll useful affixes on all of my uniques. As one note, don't invest too much into the peace and quiet. While it's still useful during this transitional period, once you get everything up and running, the Belt of a Cowboy is all you need in terms of conviction, at which point you're going to want to swap peace and quiet out for rare relics or more damage from something like Monddoc's Air Orb. Now, since I'm low on Fizz Res, I'm just going to go ahead and lock that, then try to roll for 2 useful affixes in the remaining slots. And you know what? For now, crit chance multiplier, because I don't want to invest too much, that's fine. Now here, I'm going to do something similar, except right now, I'm not too married to any of the affixes. Ooh, Fizz Res is actually pretty good. Let's lock that. As a note, the locks are a random chance. I've just gotten very lucky so far. And, ooh, mana. Okay, I'm going to move the lock to mana because it's harder to reroll mana than it is something like Fizz Res. And now I'm just going to roll until there's 2 affixes that I like. This could be something like Mana Fizz Res, 2 Res, or even Lightning Res, Max Conviction. Now, Lightning Res is not ideal here, but I can always roll Lightning Res off of other things because smaller relics are easier to roll. And since I know I'm going to be using this Belt of a Cowboy for a while, I'm going to enhance it all the way up to rank 5. I'm going to do the same thing with a written promise. Alright, I've now rolled useful affixes on all the uniques. Again, I was prioritizing mana on the larger relics, since that's an affix which is unique to them. I did also grab some lightning damage, some crit damage, and a little bit of crit chance. It's always better to balance offensive aspects rather than go all in on one. Now from here, I'm going to roll lightning damage on all of the large relics, then use the small relics to fill out things like resistances, mana, and max conviction. And the next step is imbuements. On the larger relics, you can imbue flat damage. So, for example, the Tool of Faith can roll both physical and lightning, making it one of the best things that you can get. It can also roll spell skill damage, which is okay but not ideal. Summon skill damage, but doesn't really help. A power orb, that's really good. For discipline, you can get physical and plague, evasion and move speed, which is a hybrid mod. You can also get projectile skill amount, which is pretty nice. Or you can do what I did and use all of the discipline imbuements that you needed for your small relics to cap your evasion to demonstrate and get nothing for it. Generally speaking, I don't advise getting greedy like that because now I'm going to have less evasion than I would have wanted. Alright, and with that, let's test it out in Endless Nightmares Tier 5. This is Abyss difficulty. As you can see, I have plenty of defenses, and when I get hit, my conviction all of a sudden jumps up. This is because the Belt of a Cowboy is proccing, and I have 63% evasion. Both when you enter Abyss and Oblivion, you'll face penalties to your resistances and evasion, so you will need to raise it in the future. The best way to get a lot more in a hurry: discipline imbuements on all your small relics. But for now, the build is clearing smoothly, so let's jump ahead and fight a boss. Here we are, the Floor 7 boss, Minister of War. As you can see, the build has more than enough damage, and even if I do take a hit here, my Belt of a Cowboy is going to protect me no problem. Eventually, as my resistances get lower and lower, I would start taking damage, but for now, I can pretty much face tank the boss, and it's totally fine. So from here, make sure that you keep your resistances and evasion capped, get more mana, thus increasing your conviction, and also helping to scale your damage a little bit easier because you don't run out of mana. Beyond that, keep farming for more rare relics with damage affixes, get and corrupt better versions of your unique relics, continue to complete Endless Nightmares so that you get access to more constellation points, and keep an eye out for Monddoc's Air Orb. This is a fairly rare item that you're going to need for the endgame build. Before I talk about the endgame though, if you found this useful so far, be sure to get subscribed. Oh, and leave a like while you're down there. But for now, let's talk about going from the transitional build to the full endgame version. I'm still using Tupa's Wrath, Prayer Vengeance, and Passage. But now I have Spectral Knives. The primary reason to use this is for the global buff of 2% multiplicative damage per rank. In other words, putting blessings into Spectral Knives exists to buff Tupa's Wrath. It does like 5 to 10% of my damage though, so even in that regard, it's not bad for a button I never have to press. Similarly, gear hasn't changed all that much. I have a weapon with way more base damage, a crit chance ring, and a base damage or crit damage ring. Then for cap, jacket, and scarf, I'm going with the evasion variant. This is so that I can cap my evasion without using the Careful Hunter. For belt cooldown speed, it's the only relevant option. For pants, also cooldown speed, though Physres is totally valid. Boots, move speed Res. It's the most efficient use of stats. Keepsake is another one that it depends on your gear, but for me, max conviction wins, max mana might win for you. And last but not least, accessory, go with mana cooldown speed as you want to be able to use your spells more. Next up we have relics. This is where things are going to look way different than they did before. First of all, because of this beauty, Monddoc's Air Orb. This gives a massive amount of lightning damage in exchange for giving up crit. Luckily, if you stack enough crit, you'll be able to do both. You can crit, scale crit damage, and have all the bonuses from Monddoc's Orb. This is a community relic and there's 4 different variants: air, earth, water, and fire, corresponding to lightning, physical, plague, and fire. So it might take you a while to get one, but trust me, it's worth it. This is what takes the build from confirmed tier 12 to blasting tier 12 like it's nothing and can go all the way up to tier 16. In addition, I've been corrupting my relics. This has a chance to add something nice, though as you can see I haven't been particularly lucky in that regard. I'm still using Written Promise for base damage. Belt of a Cowboy is of course still core to the build's defenses. Then there's Calcite Necklace. This is purely quality of life, absolutely not required. But it means instead of having to spend tons of faith imbuements to imbue spell and lightning damage on all of my relics, now I can spend faith imbuements, and if I run out, I can use any other imbuement on the large relics to get fizz damage. It also makes it a little bit easier to roll relics, as fizz damage and lightning damage are functionally the same stat. The other big change is I now have way more rare relics. I'm using one resilient relic for conviction decay resistance. Beyond that, I am balancing tricksters, so spells deal damage against stunned and shocked enemies, desperados, so skill projectile amount, and thundering, which is Tupa's Wrath gains base damage based off of percentage of current mana. Since this is a mana build, you should always have enough to get the full bonus here. I'm also using a couple of Stormborn for shock status intensity, this leads to more crit damage, and a couple of Protected for all resistances. While these are a very efficient way to get resistances, they aren't strictly required if you don't end up dropping them. My strategy here in terms of the imbuements on the small relics is imbue evasion pretty much wherever possible, then try to get movement speed or life mana hybrid. This uses pretty much all of my discipline imbues. Now, if we're being technical, the life part of that hybrid mod is not required. The thing is, going for pure mana, that's Faith again, and Faith is already spoken for, so we're not going to be doing that. Try to get flat lightning imbues on all of your exalted relics, spell damage imbues on your large relics, though if you roll lightning or fizz damage, that's totally fine. Also, this relic technically doesn't fit, but it has a really nice corruption for 30% multiplicative mana, so I kept it. In terms of other relic affixes, balance fizz damage, assuming you have Calcite Necklace, lightning damage, and crit damage on the large relics. Go for at least one mana roll on your exalted relic. This should get you a nice beefy mana pool. After that, you can go for crit damage, you can go for lightning damage, whatever you happen to roll. Then on the small relics, try to get flat mana, then fill in all of your resistances. You want to be capped, and realistically, you want to be a bit overcapped, so that as you take hits from bosses, you don't immediately uncap your res. But in order to get the most out of Monddoc's Air Orb, we're going to have to constellation-max. That means maximizing Faith and Discipline devotion without spending that much into Fury devotion, which leads to a constellation tree that looks like this. Expeditus to generate agility orbs, then both the never-ending cycle node to capitalize on it, lowering cooldowns, and also Scapular of Protection. This is a really good backup because you will lose an agility orb when taking damage. Instead of losing that agility orb, you lose a power orb and gain 10% of your max conviction, which means you're no longer solely reliant on Belt of a Cowboy. Then I filled out Tupa and took all of these nodes, which is a bit counterintuitive because, for example, I'm not using Lasso, so this is totally useless. What I'm aiming for here is the completion bonus. 4 Faith, 3 Fury, 2 Discipline. Let's take a look at Monddoc's Air Orb again. 4 Faith means 6.25% Lightning Shred per, provided I don't have a 100% crit chance. 3 Fury means minus 3% crit chance, but 21% attack and cooldown speed. Cooldown speed is more or less cast speed. 2 Discipline means I lose 10% crit damage, totally worth it, and gain 40% lightning damage. So, by stacking up a total of 17 Faith, 15 Discipline, and 9 Fury, I gain a huge amount of bonuses for a minimal crit loss. Some crit loss is fine, as you don't actually want to reach 100% crit chance. Like, high 80% is pretty much the sweet spot. That way you can maintain the Lightning Shred debuff and take advantage of all the bonuses while still critting most of the time. And so, I grabbed this for the extra conviction when my conviction is reduced to 0, plus conviction scaling, this for projectile damage, and this, which is a little bit trickier. We will come back to that in just a second. However, I didn't want to get too many Fury devotions, so there's some constellations, like here, where I grabbed all of the projectile nodes, but I didn't finish the constellation. Here, same thing. I grabbed Oxum's Gold, but I didn't finish the constellation. Here, I probably could have. It would give a lot of Faith and a lot of Discipline, but I found that sometimes with a mana shield, especially in higher difficulty content, I was actually running out of mana. So play this one by ear. Also, as your gear gets better, it becomes easier and easier to justify, so it's entirely possible I will pick this up with my last few constellation points. For spare points, I recommend putting them into spell skill damage, as it's a good way to continue scaling your DPS. Okay, what about St. Jude? This is a great constellation as it offers damage bonuses against bosses and elites, i.e. the most dangerous enemies. Oh, and Impossible Cause is awesome. It just nukes like 30% of a thing's health. Now I'm going to head into a tier 14 Endless Nightmare, showcase the build a bit, and talk about blessings. Speaking of, this starting selection is the perfect example of why I'm using Spectral Knives. I can get 8% multiplicative damage just for grabbing this unique blessing. Now, while clearing most enemies, you don't need to stick around until they die. You can kind of fire and forget. Now here's crit damage, skill speed, cooldown, and projectile duration. I tried projectile duration and projectile speed on Tupa's Wrath, and I found they are really good banish targets, because in my experience, the DPS I gain is not worth the FPS that I lose. While I wouldn't waste a banish because it's fairly rare, the cooldown is also useless for Prayer of Vengeance. From generating agility orbs, you get plenty of cooldown. So, skill speed, pretty good option. The faster you cast, the more damage you do. Crit damage is also a good option, because on Prayer of Vengeance, you want to prioritize crit damage on your Prayer of Vengeance. Depending on your Fury, you either get a little crit chance, or avoid it entirely by banishing the blessing. So for here, skill speed, because it's generally good to prioritize damage affixes, in this case, damage and skill speed, on your main skill over secondary skill effects. So, critical damage, Brutal Smite. This is one case where I would take the more powerful rare blessing over the blessing for my main skill. And for a Blessing of Foundation, I'm going to go ahead and banish life. That provides no value. And I'm going to pick up Blessing of Precision 1 for crit chance. The goal is to take this through crit chance, to crit damage, to projectile damage, and then ultimately to additional projectiles. Because remember, Tupa's Wrath gains a damage bonus from projectile amount. For a second Blessing of Foundation, go for the mana line. Increased mana, mana regen, reduced skill mana cost, spell damage based on mana. If you're looking for another banish target, banish life, it's not going to be useful. Now for passage, I recommend prioritizing cooldown. This way you can use it to quickly traverse the map by blinking around. On the other hand, if nothing particularly good is offered, take the highest rarity blessing for Spectral Knives. Remember, what you care about with Spectral Knives is not the damage it does, but the multiplicative damage bonus that your character gains, which applies to Tupa's Wrath. So all you care about is higher rarity, as that gives more skill ranks. And here we have the first survival wave boss, Ancient Burrower. I'm just going to move in a circle, kind of avoid its stuff, stand still to maximize my DPS when I know I'm going to get a stun. You can see the little percentage tracked. I tend to stand still around 80 to 90. And there we go, boss dead. One note about Prayer of Vengeance. It's easier than you'd expect to capture crit chance, because you also get crit from the shock effect. So if you ever notice that you are only seeing yellow numbers, and the yellow res shred icon from Monddoc's orb is no longer applying on enemies, be sure to stop actively using Prayer of Vengeance, and actively avoid getting any blessings for it. Then when you get back to town, try to rearrange your gear a little bit to drop some crit. I found it was surprisingly easy to get too much crit, as opposed to what I had worried about, which was getting too little. So you can pretty much use it off cooldown whenever you need the damage. You don't need to use Spectral Knives, though you will probably see me hit it sometimes by accident in this video. Let's close this out with a floor 14 boss. As you can see, pretty darn easy. He has a little bit more health than the floor 7 boss did, but he's still not going to last long and is easily stunned by Tupa's Wrath. The floor 21 boss will be more or less the same. This build was a bit of a wild ride. It started off super smooth for the leveling experience, but then, as I was going from Abyss into Oblivion, I kind of got stuck. Not because my build didn't work. Defensively it was totally fine, maybe even overkill. Offensively it killed stuff, but it just didn't feel as snappy or responsive as I'd like. How I ended up getting around that hump is, number 1, getting more constellation points. Those are a pretty good way to add damage. And number 2, adding Monddoc's arrow. That pretty much solved everything and instantly took me from, is my damage high enough, to, oh yeah, my damage is totally overkill and I can blast all the way to tier 60. And so if you get stuck, I recommend just farming whatever tier you're comfortable with. Try to get that arrow orb, it makes a huge difference. Aside of that, let me know down in the comments below what you think of a new video format. I've been trying something a little bit different where I try to include a bit more information and do some hand-holding. I'm not going to do this for every build guide, but I am going to do this for a few more. That way, if you're totally new to Hellclock, it should be easier to follow along. That's also why I spent so much time covering the transition from life over to conviction, because in the past, when I talked about my Veil of Prills build, that's the part where some people got stuck. Also, if you have a friend who's just picking up Hellclock, link this video. That or my Plague Split Shot Beginner's Guide, which will also be linked up in the card and down below. If you want to know more about this build, or maybe you just want a quick reference, I do have a planner over on Maxwell that I'll try to remember to link below. But that's going to be about it for me today. So thank you very much for watching to the end. I'm glad you've enjoyed. Do be sure to get subscribed if you want more content. With that, good luck fighting the forces of hell. I'll see you in the next one.